Hello everyone, welcome to this new episode of the Swift Academy podcast, which is number 10 for the season 2. Today I'm very happy to be with Mohammad Azam that come from United States. He's a very famous figure of the iOS community with a lot of courses about Swift UI, about UI kit before and architectures, and also for foundation models which will be our topics today that we'll try to discuss with Muhammad. And really, I'm very happy. And I said, okay, how are you, Muhammad? And hope that you are happy to be with us in this episode.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here, and thanks for having me. This is going to be a really exciting show.
Okay, thank you. The subject or the topics of foundation models, it's come to be now very important topics, I think, especially with the increase of using of LLMs and also that Apple adapt to use foundation models in their device using what we call Apple Intelligence. And before this, maybe try to start to introduce yourself to the community and speak about your journey, especially actually with the emergence of AI, etc., and what you find. I think that changes our manner of working, our how we develop, if you can simplify terms.
Yeah, for my journey for Apple ecosystem, it started in 2010. It was my colleague who introduced me to iOS development. He's a big fan of all Apple products. And
Okay.
in 2010, I think it was Objective C 3.2. I had to use Objective C at that point, created some apps, made some money on that.
Okay.
And then later on, obviously, jumped to Swift, work with large organizations as a lead mobile developer. And then 16, 17, I started to switch into educational. So teaching bootcamp classes, and the bootcamp was composed of iOS bootcamp, then it was later web development. And nowadays I'm teaching a bootcamp on AI and machine learning with Python. So it's completely different from iOS or anything to do with iOS. But on the
Yes.
side, I do a lot of, courses on Udemy, courses on my own website, workshops, and publishing books and stuff. So it has been a really fun journey. And when Apple announced foundation model, I think it was like maybe last year,
Yes.
LLMs on device. So that was really exciting because I was already using Apple's Create ML and other AI tools, not related to Apple, but like Pandas and Python. And it was really nice to see a foundation model released by Apple, and I was very excited to work with it.
Great. Thank you. I think that the foundation models with especially Apple have, I think, 2 or 3 videos. And I know that there is a video of, I think, 2 hours
Yeah.
explain a lot of things related to foundation models. People said that maybe Apple, it's not in the AI revolutions. But for my point of view, I think that Apple with foundation models and also other things like MLX, etc., come to maybe prepare the infrastructure to the LLM, especially on device. And when I try to focus about your last articles, I think series of article about using foundation models, I said, okay, what made you to decide to explore this topic now? I know this is uh, this is actually the people interest to this kind of topics. For your point of view as an instructor, senior iOS developer, a lot of experience, especially in United States, you think that abording this kind of topics about foundation model will be very important to create a new application in the store using foundation models because things, okay, it will be only just for chatting, speaking with the models and
Yeah.
respond. What kind
So
of, yes,
when I started with, before even foundation models, when I started with Create ML, which Apple released, I was actually not impressed at all by app Create ML. I mean, yes, Create ML does provide you with the UI and basic stuff you can do, but whenever you're doing a lot of custom stuff where it needs to be, your data has to be much more cleaner. So they
yes,
don't really have anything like Pandas. They don't have anything called like Matplotlib and NumPy and these kind of things, or even like basic algorithms for standardization, normalization. Those are just not there, or they're not really documented. I mean, and it's still the case. I mean, you have to adjust or you have to implement those things on your own. So what I was actually doing is I was training my models in sometimes CreateML, but most of the time with just Python and pandas and scikit-learn, and then converting it to CoreML models using CoreML tools. So when Apple announced LLM, which is obviously very different from CreateML because it's an LLM, large language model, I was very excited to see that how I can incorporate that information, that framework into my own applications,
Great.
like gardening app and all those things. So that led me to investigate, research more on foundation models and to see that what are they capable of. Because if you try to use OpenAI, try to use, Gemini, they are mostly not on device and they do cost money if you
Yes.
are planning to do long term. The foundation model is on device, it's free, so you get privacy just baked in. So that was a really interesting point for me to look at how we can incorporate foundation model into our applications. So that really piqued my interest.
Yes, I think it's very important what you said about this kind of that the models exist in devices involve security
Hmm.
of the application. Even we are not using what we call up to date information, but this is not the idea. Maybe
Mm.
we we need to have access what called to search agent using API because generally LLM like Gemini, like GPT, Anthropic models like Opus or Sonnet try to use this kind of web search to give the new information to you. But using this kind of foundation models, or maybe you didn't have this ability. Even we will see that we have kind of tools that we can integrate to our foundation models that help us to retrieve information and help the model to have the correct response to us in our application. That said, how you can easily explain foundation models to an iOS developer that didn't have any knowledge about this, didn't listen or watch any video
Anyway,
of the Apple developer series WW.
yeah. So yeah, I think a good example would be think of ChatGPT, but much, much, much smaller,
Yes,
running on your device because ChatGPT is also an LLM or Gemini, and running on the device on iPhone itself. So it doesn't really require any internet connection. Your information doesn't really leave the device, and you have also capability of using really nice Swifty design APIs, which are available with foundation models. So that is, I think, the core of foundation models. I mean, if somebody who has no knowledge of it, just very small subset of ChatGPT, a very small size ChatGPT running
yes,
on the device. So that's how I will explain it. Yeah.
yes. It's great because we know that the foundation models they have a limited number of what you call the parameters
Yeah.
compared to GPT or what we call online LLMs, and this is the idea because we are limited by first of all the memory and the disk, etc. Compared um, to our live in server great servers
Mm.
in a great company. That this is the idea to not use to have a small GPT, and I think that you explain very about foundation, the idea about foundation model, and this approach of Apple compared to people said, okay, why Apple didn't choose to have or try to create this online LLM and
Mm.
prefer to use to have this kind of foundation models instead to create online. What do you think about this? I know we are
Yeah.
not the company, but maybe you have idea about this uh, uh, choice to not invest in creating their native.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely a two double-edged sword, what they say, because if you're running it on the device, you get the benefits of privacy, but you also can only do a limited amount of things, meaning your foundation model itself cannot be extremely large, or else it will completely fill all your space in your iPhone.
Yes,
So they have to kind of like, and Apple has always been about privacy, so they always try to run things locally on the device unless they actually have to communicate with the server. So, yes, I mean, the good side is that it's private. The bad side will be, well, it's limited right now. I mean, it's much smaller. It probably will not get updated instantly. Like if there's some event going on and in a month or two, if you ask, a foundation model about that event that happened, any political event, it will not know about that stuff because it will only get updated when Apple release a new iOS version. So that is always, yeah, that's going to be like a compromise that you'll have to do. But to answer your question, will Apple invest in some sort of a remote thing? I think absolutely. I think if you have to be in the game, in this game of AI, then you need bigger models. Maybe you'd also need you need on-device model for privacy, but you also need those models to get updated uh, with information. But then again, we get into the same cat and a mouse game. Like if you're going to update it, then your site will become bigger and bigger and bigger. But I think it can be like a hybrid solution that if it searched the model, it doesn't know the answer or it doesn't couldn't find the right answer, then go and fetch the right answer from the web or some API.
Yes, I'm okay with you with this because Apple try to first of all to use this infrastructure. Just it's very important that you have this infrastructure using what we call silicon architecture. That you have the video VRAM with the memory of graphical card that you need to make this kind of calculation, especially for the LLM and also the memory, the sample, the RAM, sample, the random access memory that used by the processor in the same RAM that we call neural engine memory used by silicon. And really amazing that Apple have this ability. And I think that with this ability, Apple can do, because I don't know that there is any other on-device local using in other platform like in Android, etc. I don't know.
Mhm.
Maybe they have, but I don't think that they have this kind of running models on machine like iPhone, like also Vision Pro, iPad OS, Mac OS with limited memory, limited this compared what LLM needed, and I think it's a good choice for Apple that have a lot of great engineering in machine learning to invest in this kind of LLM. But I think, as you said, by the time it will be maybe another strategy to maybe in
Yeah.
WWDC 26 we have a new LLM that come from Apple. Now, we don't know about this, but maybe we can hope this. Especially when I try to maybe I'm wrong when I try to make search about applications that use foundation models. Out your experience, there is a lot of applications that do this, or it's limited now because majority of application integrate LLM, but maybe using API like you said GPT or Anthropic LLMs. But what you see in the Apple store, what kind of application that you said, okay, this great application can be a great application using foundation models, and you try to, there is an evolution in number of downloading of this application, number of features exist, and using foundation models in this application. What do you
Yeah, I
think?
think yeah, I think this is where the developers have to be really careful. Just because foundation model and on-device LLM is available doesn't mean that their application needs it. So whenever they're trying to integrate these features, they have to be very careful because nowadays every place I go, I mean, online, it has completely changed, and everywhere they have forcefully integrated AI, which does not make any sense. I mean, there are a lot of applications I just left because there's no way to create a template. It's like ask AI to create a template. I'm like, I don't even know what to ask now because I was clicking one button. Now I have to ask AI to create a template. So you have to be very careful. But a good use cases for those applications can be anything related to news articles where you need text summarization. That is the LLM is really good at. Health data is already on your device, like whenever you're walking and doing whatever, that can be given to LLM, and LLM can kind of summarize it that, hey, you should be doing more walk, you should be doing this and that. There was another app that I was working on just for testing where if you have your resume and you have a job description, then it's going to match your resume with the job description. The LLM is going to go through it, and the LLM is going to tell you that what things you need in your resume or what things are missing from your resume so that you can apply for a job or not. In my own gardening application, which is My Veggie Garden, which is available on App Store, I use the LLM, which is the foundation models, to recommend vegetables that people can plant in their location based on their location where they are, based on the weather condition, and based on the hardiness level, which is only in US. So these are the kind of apps, but you have to be again very careful that your application needs it and your application will benefit from it, or else say just no and don't integrate those things if it doesn't benefit the end user.
Okay, great. But for your point of view, we can add foundation models, but creating all the application based on foundation models, it's like, I think that it's over. Can
Yeah.
we say
Oh, yeah.
it's
Yeah. I think
over?
it should be like a small part of it or some sort of a feature. Like even in my application for gardening, not every user will have the latest device so that they cannot run foundation model. So when they go to the screen which requires foundation model, I just write there on the top that you don't have foundation model, but here are the other recommended vegetables that you can plant right now based on your location, based on the weather, based on this and that, based on actually the hardiness level. It's still tried to accommodate the user. It just doesn't completely shuts down the app or the feature. We still have to give them some sort of a alternate path, alternate screen, maybe with less features, but we do have to give them something so that they can work with.
Great. Thank you, Mohammed, for this explanation, especially for this kind of point of view about what we should add, when we should use foundation models. It's not because this is people, okay, we need to add anywhere, because we need to think before adding foundation models, because maybe our application didn't need foundation
Yeah,
models. It's work
absolutely.
fine. People are satisfied with the features. We need to think a lot about adding, and maybe we didn't need to add foundation models.
Absolutely. Yeah.
When you speak about in the beginning of the podcast about using create ML, etc., I think speak how to transfer information. I think with now we can speak about this kind of macro that come with foundation models and two. So we have two especially big macros that we use, which is the generable macro and the guides macro. And how can you, we'll speak later about tools, but can you explain a little bit what is the role of generable macro and for the guide macro?
Yeah. So foundation model, if you ask it, it can return you plain text and it can return you JSON. But the problem with returning a string is that it's not really structured. It will be very hard to parse. So what Apple has done, and which is really good, is that Apple has provided these macros, generable and guides. And generable basically allows you to guarantee about the structure. So you create a struct or value, and then you decorate it with a generable macro, and then you create the structure, create all the properties, nesting properties, whatever you want inside this generable struct that you created. So that is basically telling the foundation model that, hey, you need to give me the title, you need to give me the recipe time, like how much time it will take. And you can get fancy, like you can even use guides which are goes on the single property, and in the guides you can also say that give me the recipes that are between 0 and 15 minutes, so you can provide a range over there, and then guide will look for recipes and only fill those uh, values properties with 0 to 15 minutes or 0 and 15 between those things. So it's a really great thing that Apple has actually added generable and guide. Generable allows you to structure your response, and guide gives LLM a little bit more information that what those individual properties in the struct that you have, what do they actually mean. So those are the two very important things in LLM for foundation models.
And if we can, you speak, compare it to the basic using Core ML, it's much very easy, because just that you don't need to specify the models when you try to load the models, etc. It's will be automatically loaded using Apple Intelligence, and I think that you have also kind of API that control that you can use just because you know that there is limited to some kind of architecture. I think using microchip A17 at least
Yeah.
for iPhone 50 Pro, if I'm not wrong, and also they have some ability with the model container that give us this ability to check that if we are authorized, if we already have loaded the models, etc. This kind of API are very, very simplified.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
we can also simulate it, I think, using Xcode,
Mm.
different cases of loading the models. And I think in your articles about foundation models, you speak about this.
Yes, and I think one of the things, apart from Generable and Guide, which we discussed, one of the, I think the most important thing are
Yes.
the language model session instructions.
Yes.
Instructions are, I would even put them even more important than the actual prompt, because
Mm.
instructions is where you are setting up the context, setting up what the agent is. Like I think it would be if somebody, if you're creating something related to resume evaluation, then you will set up your instruction like you are a experienced HR manager and
Yes.
you have very much experience in resume reading and blah blah blah. So whenever people are working or developers are working with foundation model, make sure that you give special attention to instructions, because that is going to dictate a lot how the generable properties will be populated and how the prompt will return. So I always have a very long set of instructions which can have other things like tools and stuff, but the instructions are very kind of like the heart of foundation models.
It's like of skills files, if you can say it.
Yeah.
It's like of skills files that you try to training with prompt that you give to the models. You are, as you said, an expert in
Mm.
some domains, and you try to give him this ability using the history. We'll check maybe with you in the demo how we can do this in the demo. You speak about generable guide macro, but also there is what we call tools. And
Yeah.
tools, this I think this kind for me is kind of MCP to the foundation model. This gives this ability to the models to check outside of knowledge using tools.
Yes, tools are, I think, yeah, very, very important component of foundation models. Now, if you even pick up like Olama or OpenAI, Gemini, they also have capability of adding tools. And as
Yes.
you said, it's basically an external component or an external service. So an example can be if you're going to ask foundation model about the weather. Now, just plain foundation model, without any tools, it's not really going to be able to provide you with the current weather, because it needs to access some outside third party weather service that can predict or that can get the actual readings. So in those cases, you can design these tools, which can be simply an HTTP client or a weather tool, which will go make a request to Open Weather Map or whatever platform and get the weather information. And that can be given to the foundation model, and foundation model can populate its generables and give it to
Yes.
the client. So
Yes.
anytime tools can be actually kind of interesting, because even in the recipe application, you can go like really micro in that. Even in the recipe application, you can say that here are the different ingredients, but if I select rice as one of my recipes, like rice and chicken, if I select rice, don't worry about that. Go to this API and get all the rice dishes, but only
Yes.
if I select rice. So you can even go that micro level and control that when the tools are fired. But again, instructions come so important with tools, because it's the instructions that is going to dictate when the tools will be fired. The instructions as well as prompts. But instruction is where you set up that, okay, this is a example of a recipe which takes in a rice, and then it should call a tool. So anything you need external services, you can build a tool for that. And that's a very important component of foundation models.
Yes. Let's come to another question about architecture now. I know that you have a lot of great opinion about architecture, especially in SwiftUI and also foundation model. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think that we can see that foundation models with tools like a service, or kind of service that give information. Also, generable and guides are part of the data layer, if we can say it, and try to format all this information. And for you, the foundation models, it's part of this, can we say, data layers in the application. It's not related to presentation. First of all, we can keep our application using Swift UI, etc. Consume the information that can be retrieved from the foundation models, and also for other part of the application. Uh, our application is not be changed when we use foundation model, which is very important when we try to add something like foundation models to not break our architectures. What do you think of that? The API, it's created, well thinking by engineering, that thing, okay, we are good, and the integration of foundation models will be very easy in our legacy code or base code, if you can say.
Yeah, I think the foundation model itself shouldn't really have any business logic or itself. I mean, the models that you will create, the generables,
Yes.
because you don't really know when it's what will be populated over there.
Okay.
You probably can have like computed properties and all that stuff over there, but you still need a layered architecture. Like, I think a good example is if you're using foundation models and it gives you recipes and you're like, hey, you know what? I like this recipe. I want to save it in Swift data. Well,
Yes.
foundation model cannot be saved to automatically to Swift data because it's a struct. It cannot be decorated with model. So somehow whatever the foundation model is actually using, whatever properties it's populating with the recipes and the ingredients and the direction how to cook, they have to be converted into a different layer of Swift data models, which can be persisted into the device. So anytime, yeah, for the DTOs in the HTTP client and all that, so anytime you want to go from foundation model to something else, there needs to be balance and there needs to be some sort of a layer that gets converted. Now, if you're just directly talking to foundation models and you just want the result and display it on the screen, you don't really want to persist, then yeah, then your view can directly talk to the foundation models, generables, and be done with it. So that is also fine. But it really depends what you're trying to do. I think for Swift data, you will have to create Swift data models, populate them with the data of generables, and then persist them. So layered architecture.
Okay, great. That come for the section about future of iOS developing based of foundation models. What do you think in the next years adoption of foundation models, and how can change iOS development?
Yeah, I think it's a great start from Apple, especially with all the generables and structuring guide and making it very easy for developers to adopt foundation models in or LLM in their on-device iOS apps. So that's a really good start. I do think that they will have to, as we talked a little bit earlier, that they do have to probably think about some sort of a hybrid approach because they can't have a LLM size of ChatGPT on the device, so that's not possible.
Yes.
And they don't want to do completely everything off-site or external because of privacy reasons. Now, they can do kind of like a little bit of a hybrid where first it will check the foundation model on device that can I answer this question correctly? And if it can, then great. But if it doesn't, then it will perform a secure API call to Apple server, just like a ChatGPT request, and then get the data and then give it to the user. So that is some sort of a hybrid model that they can definitely work on. But I think this is a great start from Apple, especially the way that they are structuring and how it integrates with Swift UI. And I'm really excited to see what they do this year
Yes.
because I'm sure it in 2026 everything will be about AI, agentic coding, and all of that stuff. So that will be really exciting to see what they have in store for us.
Okay, great. What do you think about adopting, especially now that people try to using what we call intent app using tools, AI, etc. Short, so no entered or widget app. Instead, rather than using complete applications, what do you think about adopting foundation models with this kind of, we've said, small application widgets? What do you think about this, and also the impact of on the architecture if we try to adopt this kind of applications?
So by intent, you mean like creating those components in iOS, which
Yes,
are
correct.
smaller intents? Yeah, I think for some cases it will work. Like I think if you are I haven't really worked that much with intents like those widgets, which are available in live activities and all those things. If you're talking about that, live activities. But yeah, I think that can definitely benefit, especially on wearable devices where you are using iPhone and all that, and it's hooked up to your phone, and somehow the phone is now going to transfer the data from the device itself to the phone, sorry, phone to the watch.
Yes.
So it can be really good for physical activities. Like I think if you are doing some sort of swimming activity and running activity, it can immediately look at the data it receives using those widgets and the intents and live activities, and then transfer it, summarize it, transfer it that okay, this is what you have done today, but this is how you can improve it. So those things can definitely work on those cases. And especially tools are going to play a special role in that. If you want to get like list of exercises, weather conditions before I go outside and run. So all of those things can happen in those cases.
Okay. Before we go to the live demo, I have little question about what do you think, um, especially about architecture? We need to think now about this aspect of UI, app design using LLM, not foundation model, especially this kind of huge using what we call vibe coding.
Mm.
What do you think about this? I need to have your opinion.
So with respect to vibe coding, I actually do have 5 apps on the App Store, and 4 of them are vibe coded.
Okay.
But those are small apps, and they have just a single functionality. Like some of them are creating the contracts, some of them are creating the receipts and blurring something, or putting the lines across, removing some text and stuff. For those things, I think vibe coding is okay. But even if I go back now and look at the apps, I would not be able to point out anything because I don't understand anything that happened in
Yes.
that app because I haven't written any line of code. Now, so vibe coding for small projects, just to get it running, just to get like a mock-up running or MVP running, that's perfectly fine. I mean, kind of like if you can even throw it away, or if you're creating tools, that's perfectly fine too. If you're creating a tool like, hey, download this information from here and then put it in my hard drive, okay, that's fine. You can vibe code that stuff. Vibe coding becomes challenging when you're working for large organization where you are responsible for the code that you write. Because if I'm working in a finance industry, in a bank industry where I'm implementing some sort of a module that's going to charge some fee to the client or the customers whenever they, go over the budget or anything like that, will I be confident that what vibe coding or LLM wrote works or not? I would personally not be. I mean, I would be, I would like to understand the domain, and I would like to I can take help from LLM and all that stuff, but what I've seen is that LLM is not really good at designing things. It can fix the problem, it can write a function, but it doesn't really know how that function and where that function will fit in a large architecture. So I can clarify my concepts and I can double check my calculations, but I need to understand the domain. Like, how are we charging for medical companies? Like, how are we charging? How are we submitting a claim to the insurance? Does it get rejected? Does it get accepted? And what happens is that once you understand the domain, because it is represented in your code, then you understand the business. Once you understand the business, then you can say, you know what? I don't think we should be doing that because that's not really cost effective. We should be doing this. And you can't really do that when everything is vibe coded and agents are writing your code because now you don't understand anything. So I personally use LLM every day, but I use it as a resource to educate it myself. And yes, there will be some portions where I will use LLM to write the code, but those are things like grunt work that I don't really want to do, like create 100 records, dummy records, these kind of things. So vibe coding, you can use it in a small project, but as the project becomes bigger and the domain becomes more complex, then you actually have to sit down and understand it and understand the architecture also. That's very important.
Great. Thank you for this discussions about foundation models and vibe coding in the ending of the podcast. But now I think that we can move to the live demo. You have preparing a kind of application. Uh, uh, you'll try to explain about using foundation models. And okay, you can
Yeah.
share.
So let me show you the end product. It's running on my actual device. So what another thing is, if you are doing foundation model, if you're using foundation model, it's a good idea to run it on an actual device, because a
Yes,
simulator sometimes can be a little bit shaky. It can get errors, which won't really make that much sense. So
great.
here's a very simple application. It's called Yummy, and it's created by foundation models. There's some list of ingredients. I can select a couple of these ingredients, and I can say suggest recipes. So it's going to go, and foundation model is going to start suggesting all these different 5 or 6 different recipes. You can adjust that it can give you 20 recipes, and
Yes,
all of these recipes will have chicken, garlic, and spinach, because that's what I selected. So now I can go to any other recipe, and then it can give you the cooking instructions. Like how do you even cook that? So that's the app. That is simple app you can easily create in foundation models. And you can even extend it much further, that, okay, I like this spinach and chicken Alfredo, so I like to save it for later usage. So this is where you can add Swift data, convert your generables to the Swift data model, and persist it in the database so that you have that recipe. Because remember, the next time you will generate this, there might be some different recipes. So if you like it, you want to probably save it. So
great.
that is the demo of the foundation model app. Yeah.
Okay, great. And also for the code, it's simple. The uh, foundation models. You have also, I think, kind of examples
Yeah.
using.
So here's the very simple example. It's a recipe recommender. It's a simple class, observable. I don't think you need a main actor nowadays, because
Yes,
everything is already main actor. And this
yes,
is the instruction. Now, my instructions are quite, very, very simple over here. But yeah, you can go crazy with these instructions. Like, you can have a lot of instruction if you are invoking some third-party services using tools. Maybe you select a rice option in ingredients, and you want foundation model to not generate any recipe, but you want to get a recipe from your own API. That's the job of the tool. So you can actually add all of that stuff over here. And then we have a couple of these simple prompts. Suggest 3 to 5 recipe based on the following ingredients. You simply pass in the ingredients, and
using
we use
students also. Yes,
a stream response. So we're not waiting for the response for a couple of seconds. As soon as the response is generated, we give it to the user. And then the same thing happens with create recipe steps. We just create the steps, give it to the user. And Generable kind of looks like this. So we have a recipe, all Generable. Yeah. So it's simple. I think Apple has done a really good job in
yes,
making sure that foundation model is nice and easy to use. So if you haven't tried it, definitely try it out. You'll be surprised to see that how easy it is to use.
yes. Which is very fantastic compared to the previous core ML, etc. Things that we do before to formatting data, etc. Now it's very easy, and also we use a human prompting when we try to describe guides, etc. We use human text, the title of the chapter, etc. It's very intuitive, and I think it's very clear that also the guides with different things like choosing the minimum, maximum, etc. Uh, related to the guide. Really amazing with using these two macro, generable and also guides, and also can improve with tools like you said, specific to some use cases, using tools, consume API, and retrieving the information, formatting using generable and also guides, and go to show the result using Swift UI. I think it's
Absolutely.
very fantastic, and hopefully in the WWDC we have improving. When we speak with you about preparation, we have also kinds of what we call fine tuning
Yeah,
foundation models, which be maybe not very famous to the community, but we have this kind of ability to improve the existing foundation models And it will be also great to maybe to people to discover this, to check the documentation. We'll share with our community your articles, Muhammad, and also different resources that exist in the Apple documentation that I think and you think that's very helpful to developer that try to understand and to learn about foundation models. I don't know in the end of this episode what kind of advices can you give to the community about using foundation models and adopting also what we can say culture of AI. I think that we have this culture of AI, knowing terms, etc., related to and also discover the great work doing by the Apple and Apple engineering about improving using of AI in Apple devices.
Yes. So for foundation model, first of all, definitely try it out, like create a really simple app. And then you will have to look at the app or the project that you're working on very, very closely because you really don't want to add LLM, foundation model, these kind of things if your application does not need it, does not require it. So make sure to evaluate those things and try it out. It's nice, it's fast, it's also easy to use. As you can see, it's very simple to use. Apple has made it this way. Another thing to keep in mind is that not every device will be able to run foundation models. It's like iPhone 15 Pro and all that stuff. So what about if a user is visiting your app or a feature of your app that requires foundation model? Well, if they don't have that device, then give them an alternate screen. Don't just don't just close everything out or tell them you cannot see anything from the screen. You can give them a different experience. So always make sure to do that. Another thing which is very important, which I haven't really done on my app that I've shown, but the animations. Whenever your foundation model is returning you a stream of data, which is populating and updating the user interface, try to make that fun. Try to make it nice, animated, because they are waiting. Your users are waiting at that time when the recipes are being populated. So try to make some fun animation to keep them happy. That will be your creativity, how you can accomplish those things. And
Yes.
apart from that, as I think, Walid, you were also saying that adopters is one of those places where you can customize your foundation model because it can train and all that. So those are they're definitely really good things that you can look out for. You can also, I've read about it, like maybe a training foundation model on data in sizes, like chunking different sizes. So
Yes.
that is something really interesting because you may already have some data. Maybe you work in I don't know, some sort of a finance industry, or maybe you run some rental agreements. So that has already have a lot of data and you can provide it to foundation model and foundation model can learn from it and give you the results based on the data that it's reading. So all of this thing, this is kind of like wide open field right now because it's brand new. So definitely take a look at all of these things and make your architecture nice and simple. And you can only do that by looking at WWDC videos of Apple. They have, as you mentioned, they have some like really long videos, couple of hours also, like the whole walkthrough. So definitely watch that, see how they're designing your systems, and just keep everything really nice and simple. And that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Mohammed, for this great episode about foundation models. I hope that people will like this episode and also try to begin to adopting this using of foundation models and also this culture of AI that we need to have now. I think we need to have this culture and not be afraid of using AI and also adopting LLMs in our application, not with exaggeration, but with intelligence. I think that it's very important you insist with this, which I really appreciate. And we hope that we invite you in another episode about discussing other things related to foundation models or maybe SwiftUI and architecture. Thank you, Mohammed, and see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it was fun.